Jake had always considered himself a trusting husband. He and Emily had been together for 6 years, and though their marriage wasn't perfect, he believed in the foundation they had built. They had their share of ups and downs, but nothing ever seemed beyond repair. So, when Emily started talking about taking solo hiking trips to reconnect with nature and herself, Jake didn't think much of it. "I just need some time to clear my mind," she had told him one evening as they sat on their back porch, sipping wine. "Life's been so stressful lately, and I think being alone in nature will help me reset." Jake had nodded in understanding. Emily had always been an independent spirit, and while it wasn't like her to take off on her own for entire weekends, he didn't want to be the kind of husband who clipped her wings. Besides, she always sent pictures from her trips, stunning photos of mountains, waterfalls, winding trails. She even FaceTimed him from the occasional peak, breathless and smiling, proving she was safe. Her latest trip had been no different. Emily had left Friday afternoon, promising to be back by Sunday evening. Jake spent his weekend catching up on work, watching a game with his friends, and fixing a leaky faucet in the kitchen, normal things. On Sunday night, just as expected, Emily walked through the front door, flushed from the long drive, but looking as radiant as ever. She kissed him, told him all about the incredible views she had seen, and eagerly showed him the pictures she had taken. As Jake scrolled through the images, he couldn't help but admire her photography skills. The landscapes were breathtaking, the golden hues of a sunset over a valley, the serene reflection of a lake at dawn, the crisp green of a dense forest. He smiled at a picture of Emily standing at the edge of a cliff, arms outstretched in triumph. "You really outdid yourself this time," he told her. Emily beamed. "It was amazing. I wish you could have been there." Later that night, Jake sat in bed, looking at the pictures again on his phone. Something about them was oddly mesmerizing. He zoomed in on the details, the sharp edges of the rocks, the soft glow of the sky. And then he saw it, a tiny, almost imperceptible reflection in the dark lenses of Emily's sunglasses. His heart skipped a beat. It wasn't just trees or sky in the reflection. There was a person. At first, Jake told himself it was probably just a random hiker passing by. But the more he stared, the more he felt that sinking sensation in his gut. The figure was too close, too perfectly positioned behind Emily, almost as if they were standing together. Jake's mind raced. Emily had explicitly told him she went alone. She had emphasized it. So, why was there someone else in the reflection of her sunglasses? A cold, creeping suspicion began to take root in his chest. He tried to push it away, but something in his gut told him he wasn't overthinking it. Something was off, and he needed to find out what. Jake couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. That tiny reflection in Emily's sunglasses was like a splinter in his mind, refusing to be ignored. He stared at the image for what felt like hours, zooming in and out, trying to convince himself that it was nothing. Maybe it was a trick of the light. Maybe it was just a random passerby. But the more he studied it, the more uneasy he became. The figure was close, too close for it to be just some random hiker. The shape was distinct, clearly human, and standing at an angle that suggested familiarity. He could even make out what looked like the outline of a face. His heart pounded. Emily had been adamant that she went on these hikes alone. She always emphasized it, almost as if she needed him to believe it. But now, doubt gnawed at him. Was she lying? And if she was, what was she hiding? Trying to keep himself calm, Jake decided to dig deeper. First, he scrolled back through Emily's previous hiking pictures, ones she had taken on her past solo trips. Most of them were just landscapes, but some had her in them, either posing with her arms spread wide or sitting on a rock looking out at the horizon. He enlarged each one, scanning for any strange reflections or odd details. It didn't take long for him to find another one. A shot of Emily standing near a waterfall, the spray misting the air around her. In the wet surface of a nearby rock, there was a faint reflection. Jake's stomach twisted as he adjusted the brightness and contrast. There was again a second person, partially obscured, but definitely there. His breath caught in his throat. This wasn't a coincidence. A sick feeling settled in his chest. He needed to be sure. He transferred the images to his laptop and ran them through a photo enhancement program. It wasn't much, but it allowed him to sharpen and brighten certain areas. The results made his blood run cold. The person in the reflection wasn't just any hiker. It was a man. Jake's hands clenched into fists. Who was he? And why had Emily hidden him? His mind raced through the possibilities. Maybe it was a friend, someone she didn't think was important enough to mention. Maybe it was a guide helping her navigate the trails. But if that were the case, why wouldn't she just tell him? There was only one explanation that made sense. She wasn't alone because she didn't want to be alone. That night, Jake barely slept. He kept replaying every conversation they'd had about her trips, every little moment where she seemed oddly secretive. Had there been other signs he had missed? Had she been lying to him for longer than he realized? By morning, he had made up his mind. He wasn't going to confront her just yet. He needed more than just suspicions and blurry reflections. He needed proof. Over the next few days, he began his quiet investigation. First, he checked the metadata on Emily's photos, the hidden data that recorded details like time, date, and location. Most of them matched up with where she said she was. But one picture stood out. It had been taken at a different location than she had claimed. A lodge, miles away from the hiking trail she had told him about. Jake's pulse quickened. He pulled up the website for the lodge. It wasn't just a place for hikers to stop and rest. It was a romantic getaway, nestled deep in the woods. His chest tightened. Emily hadn't just gone hiking. She had been somewhere else entirely, with someone else. Determined to find out the truth, Jake took it a step further. He used her social media check-ins, tracking down places she had been in the past few months. A pattern started to emerge. Weekends away, spots that were perfect for couples. Then he found something even worse. A review for one of the lodges, written just days after Emily had been there. The username was unfamiliar, but the profile picture made Jake's heart stop. It was the same man from the reflection. And in his review, he mentioned having the perfect weekend getaway with someone special. Jake's vision blurred with rage. It was undeniable now. She was cheating. And she had been for a while. But she had no idea that he knew. A dark sense of determination settled over him. He wasn't going to explode in anger. He wasn't going to confront her without a plan. Instead, he was going to set a trap. And when the time was right, he would make sure she paid for every single lie. Jake had never considered himself a vengeful man. But as he sat in front of his laptop, staring at the damning evidence of Emily's betrayal, he felt something shift inside him. This wasn't just about cheating. It was about the lies, the deception, the way she had looked him in the eyes and pretended to love him while sneaking off to be with someone else. He wouldn't explode in anger. He wouldn't beg for an explanation. No, he would make sure Emily's perfect little world came crashing down in a way she'd never see coming. First, he needed to be absolutely sure. He had enough circumstantial evidence, reflections in photos, metadata inconsistencies, a suspicious review, but he needed something undeniable. Something she couldn't talk her way out of. So he devised a plan. Jake told Emily that he had plans for the upcoming weekend, a guy's trip to a nearby city for some much-needed relaxation. He played it cool, acting as if nothing was wrong. Emily, not suspecting a thing, smiled sweetly and told him to have fun. "I might go on another hike while you're gone," she said casually, sipping her coffee. Jake forced a grin. "You should. You love it out there." She had no idea that he was about to follow her. The morning of his so-called trip, Jake packed a small bag, kissed Emily goodbye, and left the house. But instead of heading to the city, he drove to a secluded spot near the entrance of the hiking trail she always claimed to visit. He parked his car out of sight and waited. A few hours later, Emily's car pulled up. Jake watched from a distance as she got out, looking around as if making sure no one was watching. Then, she pulled out her phone and typed something. Moments later, another car arrived. And out stepped him. The man from the reflections. The one in the lodge review. Jake clenched his jaw as he watched his wife run into the man's arms, wrapping herself around him like she hadn't seen him in years. They kissed. Not a quick peck, not a hesitant touch, but a full, passionate kiss. Jake had seen enough. He raised his phone, capturing every moment. The embrace, the kiss, the way they laughed together like they didn't have a care in the world. Proof. Concrete, undeniable proof. But he wasn't done yet. He tailed them at a safe distance as they hiked into the woods, their bodies close, fingers brushing against each other. They weren't just here for the scenery. They were here to be alone, away from the world, away from him. When they reached a secluded cabin deep in the forest, Jake smirked. He had suspected as much. Emily hadn't been staying in cheap motels or roughing it in tents. She had been coming here, a cozy little love nest hidden in the woods. Perfect. Jake took a few more photos, making sure to capture the moment they disappeared inside together. Then, he turned and walked away, his mind already working through the next steps. That night, he didn't go home. He checked into a hotel instead, knowing he couldn't bear to look Emily in the eyes without revealing his anger. He needed to stay calm, to be strategic. And so, he began preparing for his final move. The next morning, he uploaded the incriminating photos into a private album labeled Emily's Solo Adventures. He edited them carefully, making sure each one told a clear story, Emily claiming to be alone, but always with him in the background. Then, he set the album to share with close friends and family. It was only a matter of time before the truth exploded. But Jake had one more surprise left. He wasn't just going to expose her. He was going to destroy her lies in the most satisfying way possible. Jake didn't sleep much that night. He lay awake in his hotel room, staring at the ceiling, his mind racing with possibilities. Confronting Emily right away would be too easy. She would cry, apologize, try to gaslight him into believing it was all a misunderstanding. No, he wanted something more. He wanted her to feel the weight of her betrayal the same way he had felt it. By morning, his plan was set in motion. The first thing he did was consult a divorce lawyer. He laid everything out, the photos, the lies, the proof that Emily had been sneaking away with another man while pretending to be the perfect wife. The lawyer assured him that with the evidence he had, the divorce would go entirely in his favor. That was exactly what Jake wanted. Then he executed the next step. He scheduled a dinner with Emily that evening, acting as if nothing was wrong. Over text, he even suggested they go somewhere nice, playing into the role of the loving, oblivious husband. I feel like we haven't spent enough time together lately, he wrote. Let's go out tonight. Just you and me. Emily's response came quickly. That sounds perfect. Can't wait, red heart. She had no idea what was coming. When Jake arrived home, Emily greeted him with a warm smile and a kiss, acting like the devoted wife she pretended to be. She was dressed beautifully, as if she wanted to impress him. It made him sick. They sat at the restaurant sipping wine, making small talk. Jake played along, pretending to be relaxed, asking about her solo hike. It was great, she said easily. The fresh air, the solitude, it really clears my head. Jake nearly laughed at the boldness of her lie. Instead, he simply nodded. I bet. Must be nice to be completely alone in nature. Emily smiled, completely unaware that she was walking straight into his trap. Then, Jake reached for his phone. Actually, I wanted to show you something, he said casually. I made a little photo album of your hikes. He turned the phone screen toward her, displaying the first image. Emily, posing by a waterfall, smiling brightly. Her expression softened. Ah, that's sweet. Jake swiped to the next photo. Emily, standing on a mountain, the reflection in her sunglasses showing the faint silhouette of him. Her smile faltered. Jake swiped again. Another photo. Another reflection. More proof. Emily's breath hitched. What is this? Jake leaned in, his voice dangerously calm. Oh, I just thought it was interesting. You always said you hiked alone. But, reflections don't lie. Emily's face turned pale. Jake, I can explain. He cut her off with another swipe. The final picture. Her standing in front of the cabin. Her lover standing right beside her. Caught. Emily's mouth opened and closed like a fish gasping for air. It's not what it looks like, she whispered. Jake chuckled. shaking his head. That's the best you've got? Emily, I followed you. I saw everything. She went completely still. You followed me? Of course I did, Jake said. And you know what the best part is? He placed his phone on the table and leaned back. I sent all of these pictures to our friends, our families, even your boss. Emily's entire body tensed. Jake, please. No, his voice was firm, final. We're done. She reached for his hand, but he pulled away. I already spoke to a lawyer, he said, watching as the full weight of his words hit her. You won't get a dime from me. You cheated, you lied, and now everyone knows exactly who you are. Tears welled in Emily's eyes. Jake, please don't do this. But he had no sympathy left to give. He stood up, dropping a few bills on the table for the meal, then looked at her one last time. You threw everything away for him. I hope he was worth it. And with that, Jake walked out of the restaurant, leaving Emily sitting there, exposed, humiliated, and completely alone.